This movement is proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.
Good day, viewers. Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Matters, a show where we get to discuss about a lot of things that affect the real estate market. And today with me in the studio is Mr. Lawrence Rimayi from Oasis Real Estate. Mr. Rimayi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Faro. It's a pleasure being on your show. I've been watching your previous episodes and they're quite inspiring. I think I enjoy the information that you are sharing with the members of the public, promoting the real estate sector. It's a very good development. Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome. And today we are going to hopefully benefit a lot from the knowledge that you are, considering that you are also a player in the real estate market. So to kick off, Mr. Rimayi, this is more of a personal question. I want to understand, why is it that if we look at the real estate market, mainly in Zimbabwe, we are somewhat backward in terms of the designs that we see? If you go on the internet, you can tell, if you just see a house on the internet or on LinkedIn or what, you can tell that this house is not in Zimbabwe without actually getting the information, because some of the designs that you see, not even in Europe, just in Kenya, you can tell that we don't have these designs here in Zimbabwe. I know you are in the market. Do you share the sense that I'm putting across, or you actually think we are up there in terms of the designs that we see in the market? And if you share the same sense with me, what could be the reasons why we are a little backward in terms of the designs that we see in Zimbabwe?
Thanks, Rufaro. I think you raise a very valid point. But you need to understand that perhaps in Zimbabwe, over the past 20 to 25 years, we have not had as many developments coming through on the market. Most of the developments that we have probably houses that were built in the 90s, in the 80s. And so when you look at most of the properties that you then now see being sold on the market, it's not new stock. So that's one factor. But interestingly, I was talking to a colleague who is an architect, I think just a few days ago, and one of the things that he raised, one of the factors he raised, it's about the cost. That most times when he engages clients, and most architects would probably they desire to have these contemporary designs, to have these beautiful designs. But in Zimbabwe, you understand the fact that we've got, in terms of the costs, it's a bit expensive because most of the new materials, they are imported. Zimbabwe is a landlord country, and besides that, our duties they are on the high side. And so what he was saying to me is, when when a client approaches you and gives you specifications as to what they want, and then you quote them, they tend to change and then just say, just give me something that is simple. And so as a result, you then see that people then continue with the old designs that they were used to in the past, because most of the materials for those designs, they are probably readily available here in Zimbabwe. You look at your tiles, they are locally available, they're locally manufactured. These days, you probably now see with the new houses that are being built now, you see now that you've got chromatic, the ones that are now being built using chromatic roofing sheets, which is it's a new, but it's imported as well. So that's number two. But number three, it's also to do with the issue of exposure. You know, I would probably say both for the local architects and also at times for the clients. Then at times you see that there are people who build, you know, someone just, you know, the way that our economy is operating, someone can stumble on a very good deal, you know, and the builds and the perhaps what the house that they're thinking of building is the house that they've seen, and what they've seen is something that is probably which is local, and so you will see that the old designs will continue you continue to see the old designs being perpetuated from now and again. Then you also, from the past, I think from the colonial era, you notice that they used to give you the designs. For example, if you look at the high density suburbs, if you go to Kwadzana, if you go to Warren Park, if you go to Highfield, the houses were the same.
Yeah, they look very much similar.
Exactly. So it's because it was probably just one architect or a draftsman who was asked to do a simple design so that it's something that is cost effective. And then that's when you go to the municipality, to Harare City Council, they'll say, just choose from the ones that are available. So you will see the same designs, and because people grew up seeing those designs, those same designs are the ones that they will continue to be using. But the other one is also even to do with the if you see the new cluster housing that are coming up on the market, clients, they don't have as many options because they are told if you're buying in this particular gated community, you have to choose from these designs. So at times, even for the developers, I think it has to do with the architect that they would have engaged to do the designs for them.
Yeah, quite interesting and elaborate. So what I'm sensing from what you're saying is that the reason why we're not seeing our architectural designs catching up to the rest of the world primarily has to do with costs.
Yes.
It becomes very expensive.
Yes.
And what I've noticed myself is that a lot of construction that happens in Zimbabwe is done by individuals. I'm trying to think of a major construction development whereby 1,000 houses are built by a corporate or an organization, and I'm having a hard time. So the question that I want to then pose to you is, don't you feel like it's very important for the big corporates, the institutional investors, to play a critical role in providing housing for the Zimbabweans, as opposed to I get a little bit of money, then I start building for myself? Don't you feel like the corporates have a role to play? And if corporates are doing it, I think they can find a way to make sure that they buffer the high costs that are associated with producing the good demands. Maybe they can then spread the costs over time, maybe by renting out the units, whatever they do. But at least they have the muscle to make sure that happens. So the question is, do you feel like corporates have a big role to play in bringing a bit of order in the housing construction industry of Zimbabwe? And perhaps the regulators, don't they also have a role to play? For example, to say, if you are building in 2024, we can't allow you to have a design like this. You should have modern designs. So do you feel like those two parties have any role to play in that market?
Okay. So just to respond to that, I think you need to understand perhaps the historical factors that led to perhaps corporates not taking much of a leading role in property development or even investing in, especially because I think what we're discussing about has got more to do with the residential.
Yes.
So you notice that we've had the rent regulations, and you used to have a lot of corporates that were invested in the rental market, who were buying properties, who were actually building residential real estate for the purpose of renting out, but mostly it was they owned high-rise
multi-family,
yes, multi-family units. So the reason why they then pulled out, and most of them sold out most of the units that they had. Most of them that probably owned houses, they also sold out the houses that they had because of the rent regulations. The rent regulations continue to be a
threat.
Yes, a threat.
Such that it didn't make economic sense to continue
because
to
you're
operate.
told if a tenant goes to the rent board and reports to you and then you're given a rent order, and that rent order, if you're given a rent order, it means then you're not able to adjust your rentals to market rentals, and then obviously you're not able to get a fair return on investment on your. So that's one of the major factors that has discouraged corporates from investing in, especially if you look at pension funds, because I mean the pension funds are the ones that have got patient capital to sort of like do those kind of investments. Lately, you have seen some banks, embarking on in property development, but I think it's a problem because then it's a bit of a challenge. I think I've heard some colleagues and even some property developers complaining because they are now being crowded out. Banks, and that's not their core business. Their core business is lending to property developers, but now they get money from depositors
from
and now they are the ones who are developing. So
it becomes a problem.
So it becomes a challenge. But it comes back to one issue, and I'm sure you've heard this being raised now and again. The houses in Zimbabwe are expensive.
Yeah. We're going to get to that.
So it's about costs. The cost of construction in Zimbabwe is very expensive because most of the materials they are imported.
I'll hold you there. We're going to talk about why houses and real estate in general in Zimbabwe is very expensive. But what I'm getting from what we have been discussing, Mr. Rimayi, is that free markets should be allowed to operate because the government or the regulators, in their wisdom, decided to make sure that they put a ceiling or a curb in terms of rentals. And the participants in that market then realized that it just doesn't make economic sense, and they ended up leaving out that market, and we now have the mess that we are in. So free markets should have been allowed to prevail. Then the other question was, in terms of designs, can regulation work in the sense that if you are building anything after this year, please at least get designs that look like this. We can't allow you. Maybe.
So I think that's another factor probably that I didn't address. Our regulations as well, they are archaic. That's also a factor that affects the issue that you initially raised to do with the type of designs that we're seeing. It's the model building bylaws. The model building bylaws are 1977, and they have not been reviewed. And I was talking to a colleague who's an architect, and he was telling me that in other jurisdictions, for example, one can perhaps you can have a toilet in the middle of a house, but in Zimbabwe there's a challenge in doing that, because you need to have it will need to have ventilation. In other words, it has to have windows. So you cannot have a toilet where there are no windows. But in other jurisdictions, then they've got the technology to ensure that that the toilet is ventilated. So the challenge then comes again to the issue of costs. Again, it's also associated with costs, but it's also to do with modern technology. So our rent, not rent regulations, our model building bylaws, they will need to be reviewed to allow new designs to so that there's more flexibility, with that architects or designers can play around with. Because if you look, for example, at the model building bylaws, like these days people are developing eco-friendly homes. A house with a chimney is not an eco-friendly home, because you are now buying, you're going to chop the trees, and then but then with that is with modern designs, you can have a modern design without a chimney. And then you look again at the issue of, for example, with the living room, the model building bylaws, they'll say there's a certain percentage that you're supposed to have that is related to your windows, that you're supposed to have more natural light, which is a good thing, but it's also a limitation in terms of what the architect can play around with. Because when an architect when you see those modern designs that you're referring to, it's a form of the form. They play around with the form, they play around with the aesthetics, they play around with the materials that are being used. So there are limitations now that come through because of the model building bylaws.
So Mr. Rimayi, what I'm getting from you is that the reason why we have outdated designs is not only because of costs, it's also to do with the regulation, the bylaws.
There are quite a number of factors, quite varied. I think we can spend the whole day discussing about the limiting factors.
Yeah, interesting. But I think we should then get to perhaps where you spend most of your time which is buying and selling of properties. Mr. Rimayi, we've asked a lot of guests who have come on the show about their take on whether properties in Zimbabwe are expensive or not. I personally believe that properties in Zimbabwe are a bit on the high, and the reason why I think is I look at it purely from an analyst's perspective. I believe that we don't really have assets in Zimbabwe where you can put your money and be a little bit confident that it's going to be there in the next 10 to 20 years. You see what has happened in our capital markets. We've been hit by hyperinflation. So all your monetary assets, really, when you're looking at long-term investments, becomes a bit of tricky. So I feel like most of the capital then finds itself flooded in the real estate market. And I think that's what explains why we have real estate that's a bit on the high. So to you who play directly in the buying and selling of properties, do you share the same sentiment that real estate in Zimbabwe is a bit on the high? And if you do, why do you think that's so? Besides of course, you talked about the cost of construction, which is already on the high.
Yes. So, well, it's an issue that continues. It's a discussion, a debate that is continuously coming up relating to the property prices in Zimbabwe. I actually think that given a situation where the economy starts performing, you see prices shooting up
even higher
wow. than they currently are, because at the moment you realize that our mortgage market has not been active due to a number of factors. The few banks that are currently lending,
they're giving you 3 years maximum,
exactly,
which really is not a mortgage.
They're giving you 3 years, and some who they're lending in US dollars, and most of the people are earning in Zim dollars. Quite a number of factors. Even the cost of lending is very expensive, looking at around plus 10%, and that's massive. So I'm of the belief that what you see obtaining on the market is actually a reflection of demand and supply factors. I'm of the firm belief that in Zimbabwe we have not had as many developments coming up on the market over the past 20 to 25 years, due to the the way that our economy has been performing.
By development, you mean land development?
I'm referring both to land development and even the development construction itself, because I think you alluded earlier that most of the development that we are seeing on the market, there are people individuals who are building. Perhaps someone gets some money, they build up to slab level, they build incrementally. And then a few bingers, of course, when they do get some money, they can do the entire process on their own. But you notice that on the market we have not had too many projects that are done by property developers on a massive scale. Coming to land development itself, the few developers that not the few, most of the developers that have done developments, except a few like Shelter Zimbabwe, they have not completed their developments, and as a result, the people they are not able to get all the services that they're supposed to get. You go to most of the developments, they don't have roads that are completed, they don't have sewer connections, they don't have all the services that will enable the owners of the people that bought these properties to have title deeds. Few developments actually do have title deeds on the market, and that's a big challenge, because if that person then decides to sell the property, it means this person who is not able to, is only limited to cash buyers. You're only limited to cash buyers.
The market becomes
and even
very
cash
small.
buyers, the market becomes very small, and even the cash buyers themselves who are available, they also shun. Because a property that does not have a title deed is not secure, because it means the person who is selling this property is not the actual owner of the property. Because in Zimbabwe, an owner of the property is a person or an entity whose name appears on the title deed.
So that explains why prices are a bit on the high, and once that gets corrected,
certainly. So what then happens is, the few people that not the few, most of the people who have bought properties from developers, they've got real estate which does not have title deeds. And they are hesitant, even if should they decide, they are hesitant to put it on the market, because that property is only limited to cash buyers, and they won't be able to recoup the costs. Because in Zimbabwe, you will notice that it's more expensive. At least from what I've observed, is that because of the cost of construction, it's cheaper to buy a readily completed unit
than to construct yourself.
Than to do your own construction. Given a person who's got all the money at one go, you would rather just go and buy a completed unit than to buy to use the money and do the construction on your own. I would say this because a construction phase is got many risks, and more so in Zimbabwe, where prices can just go up. Say, I was sharing with a colleague that, for example, prices of ceiling boards or the cornices, they can just go up from $10 to $18. And this happened in Zimbabwe. I was looking at prices between November and January. In November, I checked the price of ceiling boards. A ceiling board in November was going for $10. Checked in January, the price was around about $18.
This is USD.
This is USD.
80%.
Yes.
In a space of a year.
Yes.
Wow.
So imagine you are planning to build a house, and then your budget is about $100,000. It certainly means that by the time you have completed the development, maybe you have spent $180,000. You'd rather just go and use the $100,000 and buy an existing house.
Yeah. Mr. Rimayi, I think this is a very beautiful place for us to take a short break. We'll be back soon after.
Thank you.
This movement is proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society. A very small percent of smart people can predict what the future holds and invest wisely. Investments that guarantee a secure future and generational wealth. Real estate is one investment that can never go wrong, especially when dealing with a tried and tested company. As Shelter Zimbabwe, having been in the property development business for over 3 decades, we derive satisfaction in giving our valued clients smart housing solutions, providing modern and sustainable built-up residential spaces of unsurpassed quality. Be a smart investor. Discover and experience the joy of owning a home. Yes, where others see just land, we see not only homes, but a lifestyle so desirable and worth living. A redefinition of urban living in a modern, urban, and serene environment. Witness the beauty of a worthwhile and secure investment by a team which brings it all together and dedicated to achieving extraordinary results. With us, you can get a service stand where you can build your dream home to suit your unique taste and style, as we offer an assortment of high, medium, and low density housing options. We are there to create endless possibilities. Our ultimate desire being to build homes specifically designed with you in mind, to give you the luxury and comfort you deserve. With 1-bedroom apartments for young professionals, 2-bedroom apartments for growing families, and spacious 3-bedroom apartments with ample space for maximum expression. At Shelter Zimbabwe, your dream home is just a step away. This movement is proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.
Welcome back to Real Estate Matters. Before the break, we talked about a number of things, including the reasons why the property market in Zimbabwe seems a little bit on the high as compared to regional peers. And we also talked about why it is that we see a lot of designs that seem a little bit outdated. Yeah, and Mr. Rimayi was telling us that it has to do with the regulation, the bylaws, as he put it, and also the cost to make sure that you follow up with the modern designs. Mr. Rimayi, I'm going to ask you something which is more dear to me and to Shelter, which are utilities. So what we are realizing is it has become apparent that most of the bodies that are supposed to provide utilities to homes are failing to do so. So by utilities, we're talking about your water, we're talking about electricity, we're talking about even refuse collection. Is there scope for the new developments that are coming in to make sure that they can provide for themselves those utilities, or we just have to make sure that we push the national utilities to improve their services? Otherwise, we are doomed.
Thanks, Rufaro. Of course, the most ideal situation would be for local authorities work for the mandate and who collect rates, from ratepayers to provide those services. But we also need to be sincere, and we understand the fact that most of the people, yes, they might want to. There is probably a desire, but most ratepayers have not also been paying their rates perhaps on time, and the other thing is that they have been collecting in Zim dollars. The rates in Zim dollars, and also not just that they're collecting in Zim dollars, but I think due to inflation, they have not also been able to provide the services as they should. But I still think that local authorities, besides the fact that these factors that are against them, they still have an obligation to be seen to be doing something. But just to respond to your question, about proper developers providing services, I think there are a few developments where developers have now come through. For example, in the new gated communities, because gated communities are easier. It's easier when you're dealing with gated communities because they've got an owners association, they've got a body corporate. And so as a result, they are compelled or coerced to do some contribution in the form of levies. So these are the levies. From these levies, the developers are then able to provide refuse collection. I mean, some developers have even gone to the extent of buying refuse compactors, and they do collect. I know of a few that do that. They provide refuse collection. Then I know of a few developments also that have also come through, and they've built their own sewer plants. And I know of a few developments as well that have come through, and to address the water situation, because you can't, it's not sustainable to have everyone drilling a bore on their house. and this is the situation that you are obtaining in Harare, where even on a 200 square meter stand, someone is drilling a bore. I'm also of the view that besides having an issue where there's a board corporate, but I think if we as Zimbabweans come together and say just on one street, okay, because this is that to deal with the current situation, let's drill one bore, let's contribute. But perhaps I think the challenge comes through in terms of maintenance, in terms of who's going to pay for the electricity for that bore to be able to supply water to every household. But in gated communities, I think the gated communities that have come up on the market over the past few years, they have managed to address that point, those issues.
Okay, something that I'm getting as you're explaining this to me, Mr. Rimayi, is that the reason why people are not paying their rates isn't because they can't afford. Because they're going on to put solars, they're going on to drill bores, they're going on to, I even know of private refuse collectors that come through and they are being paid. So these people, surely they know that this is a service that they require, and I would like to believe that they are willing to pay for it. But they are not, and it becomes a blame game between the authorities and the people who are not paying. What should we do to make sure that we can ameliorate that situation?
My observation, Rufaro, is that I think for the few that you find, the few people that you find are able to buy solar systems, they're able to do all these things on their own. They are the same people. They are probably the same people who are paying their rates. They are probably the same people who are. But you see, the challenge is
they're not the majority.
We have to deal with the bigger problem. The bigger problem is the economy. But then also, besides that, I think there's no coherence, in communities where people can come together and resolve these challenges. And the problem with lack of coherence as well is to do with the same people who are culprits. Because I think you will notice that even in a house, not everyone pulls in the same direction. Yeah. People are saying, let's do this thing together, and others, they don't come through. Yeah. I'm sure even in communities where you live, people have resorted to coming up with some associations, as a way of residents association, as a way of trying to deal with these problems. But even within those residents associations, there is lack of coherence.
Mr. Rimayi, you've talked about gated communities, and it's a fairly new concept. I don't know, growing up, we didn't come across as many gated communities as we are seeing. And what I've realized, correct me if I'm wrong, because you are the one who's in the market, the price of a property drastically goes up because it's just in a gated community. Is that the sense that you get? And if so, does it really justify it? Because what I'm seeing is that as we go on, we are going to have more and more gated communities, because property developers have just realized that you can easily increase the value of your property by 1.5x simply by bunching houses together and putting a juror.
Okay. Yeah, I think you raised a very interesting point. So several factors as well, they come through. When a developer, so perhaps to start with, I think we must give credit to the government, because through the government policy, there have been there's promotion of densification, and as a result, yes, I think our local authorities are yet to cope up with that government policy, in the sense that they have to review the master plans and the local and the local development plans. I'm talking about town planning laws. That's in few areas where you have noticed that people are now densifying, they are building cluster homes. It's resolving a problem that is there. Our population has increased. I'm sure you noticed the last population
15.1 million.
Yes, it's 2022. In 2012, I think it was around 12 million, 13 million, somewhere there. And in Harare, for example, the population is exactly, and I think around 2012, we were looking at about 1.2 million. So that's a drastic
increase.
That's a drastic increase. So it means now we have got more people, but the land mass is the same. It has not changed. And I think even in terms of government policy, we must be able to look forward and say, should we continue to build, horizontally
as opposed to vertically?
And that then comes back to the issue of dealing with your town planning laws. We now have to have high-rise flats. As opposed to, yes, it's a good thing that now we have got these cluster houses, but I think we can go a step further and build going up. And there's a limitation mostly in most of the residential areas. At most residential, at most you can build 50 meters going up. That means you can do a double story, which is not enough to address the challenge. But to now address your question, there are costs associated with densification.
With building clusters.
Because, yes, with building clusters. In a few areas where you notice people are now densifying, is because the local players, the local authorities, is ideally their duty to ensure that they put the infrastructure, the offsite infrastructure. You put your sewer, your water infrastructure, your roads network, to ensure that, to be able to take care of this, pressure on the existing resources. So in the few developments where people have densified, private players have used their own resources to do what the local authority ideally should have done. So that has got an impact on the cost of the ultimate of the final unit that you have to put on the market.
Yes. So it's not just like they are plugging in a number and saying because their house is in a.
So that's number one. Then number two, we discussed about the cost of construction. Cost of construction for a new build, we discussed about it. It's expensive to build a new unit, because when you build a new unit, remember you're probably now using and I'm sure you can attest to this, that the new units that you find on the market, they've got modern designs, perhaps not to the extent that we probably would desire, but I think they are modern designs. And you look at the quality of materials that they've used, most of them, they've got very desirable type of architecture. And if you go in there, it's all modern, because you can't build a 1980s structure design now, and yet you want to appeal to. And also, if you look at the type of people that go for that buy into those units, these are people, our demographics are also changing. The desires of the young people, it's changing. So you will find that people that buy into these new units are relatively young people. And of course, you find that those that are retired, but not those that are retired, and they've been CEOs, and so people that are downsizing from there. I'm sure if you go to Borojo, you see these massive houses where people probably have built these massive houses and thinking that they're going to stay there for a long time, but now they've come to realize that no, we probably now need to downsize. The cost of maintaining this properties is huge, is massive. So you find these are the people that buy into these upcoming cluster housing, and so as a result, I talked about the cost of construction. It's a new concept. So whenever you see new concept, it means that there are not too many players. So the supply side is still a bit constrained, but the demand, the people, it's slowly increasing. So that's why you find that the pricing is what we perceive to be higher compared to the old houses that we're used to, probably that are sitting on 1 acre, that are sitting on 2,000 square meters. So it's about some of those factors. And then the other thing is that most of these new this cluster housing, they provide more than they provide security. I think that's one of the main reasons why people buy into them. They are more secure than our traditional houses, which are on 1 acre, and where you have to take care of your own, you have to provide security on your own. But in these new units, they've got everything. They've got your Wi-Fi connection. They've got in some of them, they've got gas units that are connected. There's a central gas connection somewhere there. They've got everything modern. So as a result, you see that you'll notice that they tend to cost a little bit more than
a house that is
Exactly.
that is outside.
Exactly.
Okay, so yeah, the other thing that I've noticed is in most of the developments, especially in those areas where originally you had 4,000 square meter stands being converted into cluster, is that most of the owners of those properties are asset rich in the sense that I own a house there. But cash flow wise, they are not earning anything. Probably their pension was destroyed in the hyperinflation or something like that. And now they see an opportunity to turn that 4,000 square meter house into a cluster unit with maybe 8 units or so. To some extent, what do you think that need to find yourself having a cash flow has contributed to us seeing more of cluster homes, especially the smaller ones, whereby a stand is either divided into 2 or into a cluster development where there are 5, 6, 7 units also. So to what extent has the need to sustain, because you no longer have cash flow, contributed to us seeing more of those clusters?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting and very valid point as well. The cost of maintaining these massive houses, it's very massive, and more so now. I was looking at rates bills for some of the properties that we do manage yesterday, and I noticed one property's got about $900 and something thousand. One property's got about 1.5 million Zim dollars, and I'm thinking, what the local authorities, what are they thinking about? They suddenly increased the rates, and that then poses a huge burden on the property owner. If you're not able to maintain this property, I'm just talking about, I've just raised the issue to do with rates. Remember, on a property, there are many other things that you need to pay. You need to ensure that the house is painted. You need to ensure that the grass is cut, and many other things that you need to do to ensure that the property is well maintained and it's pleasantly looking. Actually, you notice property developers, the few savvy property developers, and if some are approaching these property owners, they realize that this property is distressed, and this property is sitting on a massive piece of land. Then they approach them and say, you know what, we can build class houses on your property. We'll do everything, and then we'll give you 1 unit or 2 units. So if you give in 2 units, it means that you've got 1 unit you're living in, and the other one you can rent it out. You now have an income. So most property developers, most landowners, it's something that has come through to them as a sign of relief, to them. So and you notice. Especially in suburbs, you will notice in suburbs such as Marlborough, in Borodale, you look at Hatfield.
That's been the trend.
Waterfalls, Prospect, where there are massive pieces of land. I mean, if you look at areas like Hatfield and Prospect, most of the property owners there are older people, and these were people who were probably your headmasters, your civil servants, your nurses, your teachers. Back then, they used to be paid quite some decent monies which would enable them to buy these assets. And you might be aware that most of them lost their money, pensions, and I mean, ideally they could have been maintaining or taking care of their properties using their pension money, but they don't have a pension. So if the property developer approaches them with such a such a deal, that's a very
they will
good.
take it with both hands.
Yes.
Interesting. And Mr. Rimayi, we are immensely benefiting from your vast knowledge as we are sharing this. To close off, I will just ask you this question. You mentioned that at times we see people building massive houses, 7-bedroomed houses, and yet they forget that in 20, 30 years, the kids that they are seeing today are going to move, they are going to go to college, they are going to get married, and they're going to live. Then at the end of the day, they are left stranded with these houses, and they then try to do all the gymnastics, partition them, do this. My question to you then is, whose responsibility should it be to make sure that we create not just quantity, but quality in terms of just the buildings? Because to be quite honest, I think it's somewhat compensatory behavior. We grew up sharing 1 bedroom as 5 boys. When I finally make it, I want to build a house that's big with 7 bedrooms, but I probably don't need it. So whose responsibility should it be? Should it be the authorities? Can they play a part to say, no, you can't have a house that has more than these bedrooms in this location specifically, or it should be left to us, those who are actually building the houses, as those who are financing and at the end of the day owning the properties? What's your take on that?
Yeah, very interesting. I think programs like this, like
Real estate matters.
Yes, Real Estate Matters, they're educative programs. So I would want to encourage members of the public to continue to watch these programs, because that's where the sort of information that we are talking about is shared. I think people at times do these things ignorantly. They forget about the future. They forget about the change in circumstances, because definitely in future it means when you retire you are not able to maintain the same house. Perhaps if we ask the government to do that, I think,
they can play a part.
I wouldn't want the government to come through with such regulations, because people should be able to do whatever they want with their own money. But I think it's important that we educate members of the public about the benefits of, or the lack thereof, or the cost of building those mansions, which you are then not able to derive value from in future. Because I mean, I can tell you, for example, if a $1 million house, if you go on the market right now, or a $10 million house, you might have sunk $1 million house. You might have sunk $1 million or $2 million in building a property. But if you decide then to rent it out, how many people can rent out a $5,000 house in this market, especially in a distressed market?
Even five, that's very low yield.
Yes, I mean, from experience, letting is one of our. It's also one of the areas where we do very well in. So our observation is that as you go up 2,000, 3,000, you tend to get very few people who have got the capacity to be able to pay those kind of rentals. Even in your diplomas, that most of the landlords, they want to rent out their properties to diplomas. But then even the diplomas, I mean, I'll tell you, for example, most diplomas, their budget is about 2,000, 2,500. Unless perhaps you get your top diplomat, are the ones who are probably able to pay at maximum of about 3,500. Going to about $5,000 and you're expecting, you build a $3 million house and you're expecting to get that kind of rental. I think you are limiting yourself. You are limiting yourself, because no one is there. If ever, I can't say no one. There might be people who are willing to do that, because I think, we've rented houses for about 5,000, but then they are very, very, the house can stay on the market for quite some time before getting a tenant. So I would not encourage you to build, houses that you are then not able to maintain in future, unless if you know that you continue to get consistent income even in your retirement. Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from you is the approach that makes more sense, as opposed to having regulation, is to actually inform the people using programs like the one that we are having, so that they are able to make decisions on their own, as opposed to having regulation that say you can't build. And what I'm also getting from you is that even looking at it purely from an investment point of view, the more the value of your asset goes up to such a limit, the more the yields come down. So, for example, we're looking at a house that fetches a monthly rent of $2,000. That's 24,000 a year, and for you to match a yield of 10% yield, it has to have a value of 240,000. So if your house is at $1 million valuation, that means that's divided by 4. Your yield goes to 2.5%. So the more you put so much money, the less you are going to yield in terms of your property.
Certainly.
Yeah. I think this is a beautiful place for us to end today's show. It's been quite informative. Mr. Rimayi, thank you very much for coming through and sharing us this information. Any parting shots that you want to talk to our viewers?
Thank you so much. I would like to say a big thank you to Shelter Zimbabwe, to Mr. Mende and the entire team for giving me this great opportunity to be here on this platform. And to members of the public, I would like to encourage you to continue to watch these programs. I think they're informative. I think you will learn 1 or 2 things that will be able to help you in your property investment. So thank you so much.
Oh, beautiful. And on that end, to our viewers out there, continue to support us. You can support us by watching, subscribing, so that you make sure that you don't miss any episode, and to share with others who would also want to benefit from the information that we pass out on this show. Until next week, cheers.
This moment was proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.